early voting precincts of Saturday, just like we always do. Just election day, we're gonna run the 5.
Yes, sir.
Instead of the 11.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I've already asked to speak at several, I'm gonna go everywhere that there's one or two people that'll listen to start promoting. You know, to say, hey, this is what you have to do. And that's where I'm gonna need everybody's help in this room too. To say, hey, here's how you do it. And if you look at numbers, that, vote by mail is the most expensive way we do it. 2 people check signatures, when you look at postage, you look at everything that goes into it, plus the canvassing board, and it's the most expensive, and early voting is the less, and so.
And on top of that, on election day, those 5 precincts are open, it don't matter what district you live in or where you at, you can go to that one and vote there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes.
Any other comments? Don't leave anybody out. All right, you say we, by consensus,
Yes, sir, I think the next step is by consensus, direct me to draft a resolution, and then we'll present that at the next, commission meeting. The only, caveat to that is, let's say that they decide to set this election and the word comes out tomorrow, they set it, we might have to have a special, county commission meeting, because I don't know what the timetable is, but if they keep dragging around like they've been doing, then the next county commission meeting will be pretty soon enough, I think. Does that sound right to you? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, we're doing this as a pilot program, and then if it works, then we'll come back and decide if we wanna continue.
Yes, sir. Cause we got till 2020 election.
Right. Now, the way you have to do the resolution, everything set up, is, it's gonna say, this is our precinct is gonna be countywide, and our polling places are gonna be these. It's not gonna say pilot project, it's just gonna say, that's the way it is. But of course, just like y'all are changing it now, you can change it later.
hear consensus?
Yes.
Okay. We have it. Okay, Mr. Reed, if you'll draw that up.
Yeah.
Thank y'all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. All right, proclamation declaring, move number 2, January 27th as Widows Day in Madison County. Mr. Danny Thomas. Is he here?
I don't believe so, that's why I don't see him here.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, I have a motion to approve January 27th as Widows Day in Madison. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right, bravo. All right, a discussion involving an interlocal agreement with the city of Madison and building inspection service.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, I can give you a little background on that. Also have, Rick Davis, our building official, and Bill Davis.
Rick Davis.
Oh, sorry. I just promoted you, Rick. Rick Anderson, I got Rick Anderson with us tonight, our building
Got
official.
thrown in the bus with Anderson.
Yep. We've had an agreement for some time with the city of Madison, a reciprocating agreement, to help provide building inspection, services. They also act as a building official. Chuck Hitchcock, used to provide that at the, city level. And in case one of our inspectors or our building official was unavailable, Chuck would fill in. And, when Chuck was unavailable, then our people would fill in. And, it's worked very well over the years. It helps keep things running. And, but unfortunately, Chuck had some health problems this last fall and had to retire. And so it's left the city without a building inspector or an official. And so we picked up those duties, and have continued on. However, this is a short-term agreement, and it's really the big advantage is it's reciprocating. One can help the other. The city and the city managers here, Mr. White might want to speak to it, what their plans are, for if they're gonna replace the person or not, but at this point, I think we need a new agreement if we're gonna look at doing this for the long term. And so, Mr. White, did you wanna speak to what the city's plans are?
Evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
Jerome White, City Manager, accompanied by the Mayor, Mayor Anna Thompson. Mr. Kaufman and I had been talking about the interlocal agreement for some time. going to expire, so we started to put in a place, a process that would, continue to have that agreement in place. Unfortunately, I was unable to move it, at one of our meetings, and, went into depth, as to how we would benefit, from having an agreement in place. So we're in the, process now of doing a search for a part-time building inspector. That was a request of the commission. So we've gone to North Florida Career Source, also advertised in the paper. I have called around to some surrounding counties, and at this point, to no avail. The closing date for the job posting with Career Source is the end of January, first week of February. And we're hoping to get a hit, but if we don't, then we're still in the same shape. We can write as many permits as we can from the city, but unless you got a building inspector, it's all for naught. So tonight, the mayor and I are requesting an extension for 2 months, to see if we're able to get someone to at least fill that position. Or I can't say we will or we won't, but in the event that we don't, that 2-month extension will allow us at least to stay afloat, if something does happen. In the event nothing happens, well, we'll have to come back to my commissioners and see if we can put the program back on the table. It's very much needed. State statute requires that we have one. So that was the unknown going in before. And let me also say too that the city is very grateful for the services that the county has been providing. I can say Mr. Rick Anderson has been right there at every call from Ms. Mary Graham, so we appreciate that. But we're asking for your approval to grant us a 2-month extension, if you would.
That'd be my motion, Mr. Chairman.
I second.
All right, I have a motion and a second to extend it for 2 months to allow the city to see if they can find a part-time. Any discussion?
Yeah, I think the interlocal agreement itself doesn't really have an expiration date. So I think what, probably the better way to phrase that is that y'all are gonna come back and readdress it in 2 months, because it's not that you're granting an extension, it doesn't expire on its own. It's just y'all will come back in 2 months and readdress it, and y'all will talk about it then, and, you know, whether you wanna keep going or what you wanna do.
We will re-agenda it then in March meeting.
So I need to withdraw that motion.
That's mine.
Yeah, or just modify it, I mean, however y'all want to do that.
Well, we'll come back and look at it. I think that'd be the best way to do it.
All right, so we'll discontinue the motion and we'll just put a re-agenda.
Well, let me go back, step back.
Okay.
I'll withdraw the motion.
Okay.
Since it doesn't really expire, and then, Mr. Watch, these two, we'll just come back and take a look at it again.
And withdraw the second.
Yes.
Okay, we'll put it up, re-agenda this for March, maybe the second meeting in March, give you time to see what you can do.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Washington. Okay, number 4, under new business, discussion regarding, community service opportunities. Mr. Kaufman, you want to address that?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. We've been talking about our next cleanup Madison, which is scheduled for February 22nd. We're also having a meeting at the chamber on January 29th at 5:30, if anybody would like to attend, and encourage people from the community to attend to see how they can participate. But the main day is scheduled for February 23rd on Saturday. While we've been discussing this, somebody asked if people wanting to provide community service could pick up on the roadsides. And so we said, well, we'll check into that. Commissioner Davis asked that we check into that. I think Commissioner Davis, you spoke to Judge Browning about it, and I followed up with Judge Browning and the probation officer, and she said, yeah, they are always looking for opportunities for people to be able to do their community service. In solid waste, we can use some of our part-time people to supervise, the people. It has to be supervised, when you do that, and signed off on. And I think I put a copy of the form, the probation officer asked that to be signed off on the hours that they work, make sure they're doing the work. bring that to y'all tonight because, to move forward with that, we really probably ought to look at having some kind of release, or ask the attorney to check into this, because I have heard some other stories, from some other counties nearby that have had some issues with people working for them, and then turned around and sued the municipality. So we wanna make sure that we're fully protected when we go into this. So if it's, I wanted to bring it to y'all's, attention of what we have done, work we've done on it. And if you wanna move forward, then, ask staff and the attorney to look at what we need to do, paperwork wise, to be able to do this.
I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah, I think we need to move forward with it, but I have a question for council. Some different occasions I have stopped and picked up trash on the roadway, and I see an address there. Is there any way we can do an ordinance that will fine people for littering?
Well, you've got state statutes now. The problem is that if you have a piece of mail there that's got somebody's address and you see it on the side of the road, that in and of itself doesn't prove that they littered, right? I mean, it makes a lot of sense, that's probably where it came from, but that's not really evidence. You can't really generally do a case off of that. Because, what we used to always talk about was people would have bags of trash, and then if you open the trash up, you go through and you find a bunch of letters to somebody, and so obviously that's their trash. We can try that, and I don't think, we can certainly try it, but I can tell you in the past, that's been the issue.
Yeah, do you think, there may be some other municipalities may have done that, or?
I don't know. I really don't know. We can look into it. Happy to look into it.
Mr. Harper, hasn't the sheriff's department actually sent summonses and citations to some people in the column, whether he's talking about like big bags of trash where you found it was obvious?
Our response has been, we send a deputy out, we dig through the trash ourselves, we identify the mail like you're talking about there, and then we go knock on their door, and we give them an ultimatum to come clean up the area, or we're gonna file charges with the state attorney's office. Here's the thing, for it to become a misdemeanor crime, you got to have 15 pounds right off the bat. So I got to prove that 15 pounds of this trash or that trash belongs to this person or that person, and that they are in fact the ones that put it there. I can tell you that the state attorney's office is not going to entertain any type of littering unless we're looking at something on an industrial level where you're talking about tonnage. I mean, it's really frustrating. There's a couple places that are extremely bad in this community, up off of Pineapple, down here off of the backside of Farm Road, and it just don't make a lot of sense. That we'll find the trash at the Pineapple side up there that'll have addresses from this end of the county, and then we find trash down here that has addresses from the north end of the county. So, I mean, I don't know how many sites that these people are driving by to dump their trash, but they take it from their end of the county and put it on the other end of the county. Short of catching someone in the act, it's just really tough. And an ordinance, may give us a little more teeth if we approach it on the same level as we did with the boat parking.
Civil citation.
Yes, sir, but there again, you gotta have, you gotta have that back end support,
Well,
here
like
to prosecute that ordinance.
it's kinda hard to find a 15-pound bag of garbage one of them.
I tell you, you'd be surprised at what you find at just them two spots. Everything from animal carcasses, to, material from where it looks like a house or mobile home's been remodeled, gutted, they just go up there and dump it out. I don't know if it's just a convenience, or if they're trying to circumvent fees, from the dump, because I know that if you're gonna haul off certain type of material, you can't drop that material at our collection sites. You have to actually take it to, the dump. I've had conversations with Mr. Kaufman, and he's been great with it. He's actually been willing to, the property owner, try to get some fees waived. I mean, obviously we can't send inmates on private property to pick up this stuff. The county employees can't go on the private property and clean this stuff up, but you know, that we have had some discussions on possible solutions to at least try to help the folks, because I can tell you, it's really heartening. I'm not talking about a deer bag of corn that, you know, that people complain about blowing the back of the truck. If you hadn't, I encourage you to ride to those two locations and just take a look at that. I mean, it's really sad, and I know our community's better than that.
Yeah, I think everybody here would agree that there's litter on the sides of the road now. I've never seen it this bad before.
Yes,
It's bad.
yes, sir. And, you know, and the cleanup day, that's fantastic. You know, we had success with that last year. You know, we participated in that. We had teams, actually made it was work, but we made it fun. Because we had teams, and, you know, we spent, you know, half the day or the day cleaning up our assigned areas. But, you know, the discouraging part of that was if you went back the very next day, or even that afternoon, of where 20 people had just walked 7-8 miles picking up bags of trash, it's right back there again. I'm talking the same afternoon and the next day.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
So it's going to be a constant. You know, I think it's an education thing. You know, I know that in meetings in the past we've talked about that here. You know, I think we need to push it at our youth level, the education side of it.
Right.
And you want to talk about some good community service opportunities. You know, I wouldn't be too comfortable with folks just walking down the highway, but I would be very comfortable with folks going to these type of locations, of course, with the property owner's permission, and getting their hands in some of that stuff. I can tell you, my deputies love it. It's you know, it's really it's an issue, and there is no easy answer or result for it. And then while I'm here real quick on the community service, at the sheriff's office in the past, we've been able to satisfy some community service hours, both with adults and with juveniles, our youth. Obviously, there's some restrictions of where we can utilize folks. It's usually out at the administrative office, out on 90 in between the schools, our investigative compound, which is behind. And that being one is, we can't have the citizens in contact with the inmates or near the inmates, so that eliminates anything at the jail. Our best months is always the summer months, especially for our youth, because our administrative offices are, you know, they close down at 5 o'clock, so by the time a teenager is out of school at 3 o'clock, that only gives them 2 hours. Well, if they've got 25 hours to do, or 50 or whatever it may be, that's a lot of days. But the summer, we've had some success where some of the youth have actually came and through their arranged through the courts, if they're on probation, through their probation officers, and in agreement and approval with Sheriff Stewart, that we've had youth out at our administrative offices, and they're doing cleaning, mopping, taking out trash, picking up the grounds, and it's worked out real well. We've been able to, I think, teach a little bit of maybe some life lessons, that the differences between consequences and punishment. Sheriff Stewart has been very supportive in that, and I feel strongly that he will continue to be very supportive. And that'd be an option for the sheriff's office to assist with some of this community service.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I can tell you, as a former juvenile probation officer for 30 years in these three counties, Taylor, Jefferson, and Madison, when I worked in Jefferson County the last 10 years, that was one of the things we did without my probationers that had community service hours ordered by the court in Jefferson County. And several Saturdays, I was able to get the sheriff to give me one of their old vans they weren't using. And I actually took the van, was marked, and we put road signs up saying, men work, paperwork, and actually had juveniles in orange vests, just like we've been using when we did the work day, and actually walked them down the side of the road, and some people said I had a chain gang, but anyway, we cleaned up several the secondary roads, like the one going to Waukeena, and some of them not the major highways like 90 or 19 and things. So it can be done. I did it on a regular basis, and I can tell you, I had very few reoffenders. after they walk some Saturdays, and I did this during the summer too. So, I can tell you, it works.
Yes, sir.
So I would recommend, as far as the adult court, I would recommend that we do whatever we need to do, drop some policies and
Yeah.
rules to do that. Be my recommendation.
Well, I helped with it the last time, so I'll help with it again.
Good.
Oh, yeah.
Do we need a motion to have you draw up, some type of release or waiver?
No, and, in fact, I think I've done this for I've done a volunteer release, that term is familiar to me, so I think I may just have one. But anyway, I think probably the next step is, if we're going to do that, we probably need to have a written policy on how we're gonna do it, and then we'll do that in the release and just tell us to bring that back to y'all for approval.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, the probation officer basically said they would need to be under some type of supervision,
Yeah, they do.
and of course, they recommended the waiver.
Yep.
And we do have the staff without putting additional burden on the budget, correct? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Do we currently have a no littering ordinance in the county where there would be a possible fine if someone was caught littering?
I think Mr. Reeves stated earlier, there is a state no littering, I think, what is it, $500?
It is, and we also have an ordinance, but the issue is not drafting the rules, the issue is catching and prosecuting.
Yeah.
You know, because
Well-
again, it's the evidentiary part, you can find a letter in a trash bag, but it's hard to turn that into a.
Right. I know though, a lot of the scenario out by us off of 255 is we have a lot of truck traffic. And a lot of people, it is an education thing because they throw stuff in the back of their truck, in their bed, thinking that they're keeping it off the road. Then they drive and you can see it just exiting, you know, if you're driving behind it, it's not hard to see. And I think that if we had posted, if our signs, you know, it says slow down or whatever was on the roadways, had those little signs that said fines for littering, it might have an impact, because it certainly had an impact with the United States. I mean, back in the 80s and the 70s, when we had such a littering problem in this country, posted signs and fines did help curb some of those activities. It's not hard to see something blow out of it. Just take a couple of tickets, and believe me, the whole county would be aware of it.
If I could just speak on the $500 fine, I'm not certain where that originated, probably from seeing it in another county or an ordinance somewhere. But I can tell you the state statute does not read a $500 fine. The state statute reads first offense up to 15 pounds is a civil infraction punishable by a $25 fine.
Which is okay.
But you know, the signs are misleading because you see them all over. I'm not sure what our signs say here, but you may have one here that says littering up to $500 fine, or you cross county lines and they have one that says $150 fine. I think that's more of a ordinance-based fine amount, which with an ordinance we could impose. You know, the county, you guys could impose whatever fine you chose. But there again, we would need to approach that the same way that we did the Cherry Lake parking issue. You know, with a new drafted ordinance, and then a citation versus the state citation.
But the problem there is the evidentiary part that you mentioned earlier, the Cherry Lake issue was parking. You've got the evidence of trucks sitting there or whatever, but the bag of garbage really gets
Well,
you.
yeah, I think it would be very similar, because if you call us up to Cherry Lake for a truck that's parked there, and they're out on the water, I have a vehicle that has a tag that we run, and that identifies the owner of that vehicle, so that's who I'm writing that citation to. I think if we were talking about dealing with bags of trash with, letters and addresses in there, I think it'd be very similar, as if that person, we would be writing that ordinance violation to that person that's, you know, that's in that trash. I'm not going picking up one piece of paper, but if we're going to these places and there's obviously repetitive dumping going on, and you got the same addresses and names popped up, you know, all over these places, I think if you attack it by ordinance, it would be very similar. And I may be speaking wrong, Mr. Attorney, you could, you know, correct me on that, but I don't see how that would be much different than me writing a civil citation or ordinance citation to a vehicle
I see your point.
based off of who it's registered
Trying to
to.
face it, if it's.
So I think it's very similar.
And you're talking you're talking civil citation that does not, that we're not involved in state attorneys, like you said, they're not gonna touch it, so I mean,
Right.
you're wasting your time there.
Again, I think it's
If we
best handled like the Cherry Lake issue.
Handle it locally.
Yes, sir.
All right.
I think it would be a good idea to research whether there's an, or we could modify the ordinance to include language like that. I mean, I know there's a lot of state statute that basically says, if you're the registered owner of the vehicle, it's prima facie that you're the one who committed it. Therefore, you get the citation. Just like a lot of parking violations around, it don't matter who's driving it, if you're the registered owner and it's parked there, the registered owner's getting the ticket.
Yes, sir, same thing.
That's right.
And I agree with what the major says, you know, if it's legal and defensible, if it's prima facie evidence that owner's name or that is in that bag, that you own it.
Yes, sir.
I think what we'll probably need to do, let me look at some other, counties and cities and see what they have, and
All right, we'll table it and bring it back. If you,
That's a consensus of the.
yes, that's,
Yes.
Back consensus in us, is February too soon, or you're?
no, I mean, maybe second meeting in February, something like that, if that'd be okay.
Well, has to be re-agenda then, for that time, take another look at it. Go ahead.
That was about the ordinance for the littering, not about the
No.
volunteer form. I just wanna make
Well,
sure.
I still think that we
Alright.
looking at the.
Well, I think you say you have a volunteer form, we do.
I can't swear to it, but I believe I do. If I don't, I could make one. I mean, that's not.
Oh, okay.
But the sooner we can get that established, the sooner that the judge would be able to assign people community service.
Sure.
Well, what I'll do, if it's okay, I can go ahead and email what I've got to Brian, and then I think if Brian, you know, wants to do a policy or something, kind of write up and we can put that in the packet for y'all to look at.
Okay. All right. That concludes our full agenda. Mr. Moore?
Mr. Chairman, I was asked to, find out if the board would like to sponsor a Teacher of the Year banquet table, which is gonna be on, January 31st. And if there's anybody that would like to make a, donation to the silent auction that we're gonna have, you can contact me and I'll, make sure that your item is bidded on silently. And it's just a fundraiser, you know, to help with the, event, and that's gonna be January 31st.
You organizing the table?
No, I thought you were doing that.
Oh, okay.
No, but I
I
was,
think all of us have been
We've all been contacted by our former clerk.
so what are we gonna do, give the money to,
Excuse me, check Brian, what I was told.
Okay.
Okay.
okay, we just give the funds to you. I'll take it,
Is that what Tim talked to you about?
Yes.
Okay.
okay. January 31st. And I think there's a letter going around that we need to sign congratulating the, nominees.
One thing, yeah. We've signed it.
Okay. And, that's all I have, Mr. Chair.
All right. Add this order, pass. Commissioner Davis?
Just at our next meeting, I think Brian and I both will be, that's the 13th, is that right, Brian? We will be at the, Economic Development Summit with the North Florida Economic Development Partnership, having an Economic Development Summit, and that's where you're going, and that's where I represent the board on that committee, and that's where I'll be on the 13th.
Hopefully four of us will be, okay, that's fine, that's
Yes,
meeting
there is a
tomorrow?
task force meeting with the River Task Force at the Holiday Inn in Lake City tomorrow at 4. And this falls in conjunction with the North Central Florida Economic Development, the North Central Florida Regional Planning Council that I represent the county on, which that meets later at 6, so. But anyway, felt like to have all the 12 counties involved on the River Task Force, they're members of the Planning Council, so we will convene that meeting 2 hours early to conduct our business regarding the river situation. And also, I don't know if you want to mention, of course, but a lot of folks in the audience tonight were at the legislative meeting with Senator Montford, and I think that message was very well. You know, he received that, and I think we'll get some support from hopefully the legislature this year.
But especially with him being on the environmental committee.
And if I may, I don't mean to drag this on, I just will mention that there was a meeting today, and I know that the DEP made a presentation in PowerPoint, and I reviewed it. I was a lot disappointed the fact on the PowerPoint that they showed North Florida in our region as far as having little to none sewage problems or spills. But I know that their PowerPoint was Florida based, and that the DEP wasn't reporting anything or tracking anything out of state. So if just looking at the PowerPoint was very misleading. There's no issues up here, and we have billions of gallons of raw sewage entering our state and along our river. And according to that PowerPoint, we were in the low to no percentile of any discharge. So I did voice that, and I know Brian called the office today.
I actually called Debbie Mayfield's office. She's a senator. She chairs that committee on the Environment Agriculture Committee, and we actually posted that on the Facebook this afternoon, so y'all can see that.
Okay.
And she did mention that at the end of the meeting, she asked the Deputy Secretary at DEP what they were doing about the Valdosta issue.
Well, that's great.
So we really appreciate her bringing that up. And Chris Doolin helped with that, you know, getting the word at that meeting that this was a concern of ours, and I was able to talk to her aide this morning about it, and he was unaware of it, so he was able to talk to the senator, and so she was able to bring it up. I understand Senator Mumford also brought it up at one of his committees yesterday too, but the more they bring it up, the more they can bring light to the issue.
Now, we've never had this much, I guess, progress in the past, and I really think that coming together as a group of counties has made a big difference, because individually, we're not being heard.
Is the task force thinking about contacting the government with regard?
That's part of our strategic, our plans that's being worked out now.
Good. But it's obvious from what he did in South Florida, this is how his list.
And I know Scott Coons is trying to get an audience with either the governor or one of his aides to with the governor's water policy.
Very good.
Hopefully this will piggyback on it.
Good.
Mr. Clerk?
I have nothing, sir.
Mayor Lee?
Nothing.
Well, anything?
We're doing good down there.
Okay, very good. Anyone else have any other comments for this agenda? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion adjourned.